The sky is still a deep, bruised shade of indigo, the stars hanging in a brittle silence above the earth. The fires of the camp burn low, their embers breathing faint orange light across a sea of tense and shadowed figures. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse shifts its weight, the leather of its tack creaking in protest. The sound of distant water trickling through a stream cuts through the stillness, an ordinary, almost tender sound, oblivious to the storm about to erupt. This is the final hour before the sun rises on the day of battle. The warrior sits apart from the others for a moment, not out of arrogance but instinct, needing space to gather thoughts. His name may or may not survive the day, but right now, in this fragile darkness, he is a man, not a monument. His fingers rest on the worn hilt of his sword, feeling the nicks and grooves etched by years of service. The cold bites at the exposed skin of his hands, and he draws them back under his cloak. Setting the historical stage, it is the year X. This will be determined by the chosen battle setting, and the land is a patchwork of contested fields, stone roads, and smoldering villages. Two armies face one another across a narrow stretch of earth, each believing the day ahead could decide the fate of nations. Historical records paint the military situation with stark clarity. This is not an isolated skirmish but a confrontation years in the making. Political rivalries, territorial disputes, and old vendettas have all converged here. Behind every warrior sharpening a blade, there is a story of loyalty, to a king, to a cause, or to the man standing beside him. But here, before the first trumpet sounds, history is just the quiet between heartbeats. The camp's breath before the storm around the camp, small groups murmur in low voices. Some men pray to gods whose favor they hope to win, others share muttered jokes to chase away the dread. Armor is adjusted, shields inspected, arrows counted. The air smells faintly of iron from the weapons, mingling with the earthy scent of damp soil and the last smoke from the cooking fires. There is a rhythm to these pre-battle hours that transcends centuries, whether it's a legionary of Rome, a Greek hoplite, or a samurai on the plains of Sekigahara. In every age, soldiers have risen in darkness, readied themselves in silence, and faced the same unspoken question: will I still see the sunset? The warrior's mind, our focus narrows on the central figure. His mind drifts, not forward to the clash of steel, but backward to the road that brought him here. There were months of marching, nights under foreign stars, letters written but never sent. There is the memory of home, the smell of bread baking in the hearth, the sound of a child's laughter, the warmth of someone's hand in his. Those memories are sharper now, as if his senses have prepared him to take them in one last time. Somewhere faintly, the camp's cooks are already stirring. The last meal will be served soon. It will not be a feast, at least not in the way the bards will one day sing of it, but it will carry a weight unlike any other. Food in this moment is not about sustenance. It is about the ritual of preparing to face death with dignity. Historical context as a hook. Different armies, across time and culture, have treated this hour differently. In Spartan camps, warriors were said to eat a broth so thick with blood and salt it was as much a dare as it was a meal. In Rome, legionaries might break bread with cheese and dried figs, eating lightly to avoid sluggishness in the fight to come. In medieval Japan, a samurai might drink tea in deliberate, meditative silence, centering the mind before the first clash. The power of these last meals is not only in their nutrition, but in their symbolism. They tell a story about the warrior's place in the world, what he believes, what he fears, and how he hopes to be remembered. But that comes later. For now, the warrior listens. The sounds before violence somewhere, an officer's voice carries softly through the darkness, checking positions. A bowstring creaks as it is tested. Far off, a dog barks, not knowing that by nightfall it may wander alone through the wreckage. The ground underfoot is hard and cold, each step echoing the anticipation in the air. Even the wind seems to hesitate. And then, just faintly, the first glimmer of dawn begins to stretch across the horizon. It's a thin, pale line at first, but enough to turn shadows into shapes, enough to paint the camp in the color of anticipation. Every soldier knows that with the light comes the signal. For the warrior, the day has already begun in his mind. He has rehearsed this moment in dreams and waking hours, the grip of the spear, the weight of the shield, the feel of his armor's straps cutting into his shoulders. Yet there is still time, just enough, to sit, to breathe, to eat. The emotional hook as the sun edges higher, the camp begins to stir in unison. This is the last dawn for some. By nightfall, the ground will drink deeply of blood, the air will be thick with smoke and screams. But for now, there is only the fragile stillness of the world before battle, a stillness so fragile it feels as though speaking too loudly could shatter it. The warrior rises, walking toward the cookfire where the others are gathering. His footsteps are steady, but his heart knows the truth. This may be the last time he tastes food, the last time he sits in warmth among the living. In a few moments, the warrior's last meal will be served. And in a few hours, his name will either be carved into stone, or vanish into the silence of history. The cookfire burns hotter now, the coals glowing white at the center. Smoke curls upward into the pale morning light, carrying with it the scent of barley boiling in a dented iron pot. Around it, men gather, not in neat ranks but in loose circles, shoulders touching, heads bowed slightly toward the warmth. There's no laughter now, only quiet talk. The warrior finds his place among them. The meal is simple by modern standards, yet it is the product of deliberate tradition. Each bite has been chosen not only for fueling the body but also for fortifying the spirit. In his army, superstition runs as deep as strategy. The bread of strength, the first offering, is coarse bread, dense, dark, made from barley and a handful of millet. In this culture, bread is more than food. It is a symbol of endurance, of taking the earth's strength into one's own body. Historical accounts describe soldiers breaking it by hand, passing pieces around as if sharing part of their own resolve. The warrior's piece is warm, its crust cracked, the steam curling upward in the morning air. He chews slowly, each mouthful grounding him in the present moment. The meat of victory. Next comes the meat. Depending on the time and place, this could be salted pork among Roman legionaries, spitted lamb in a Greek phalanx, or grilled river fish among certain Asian warrior bands. The cut is small, the fat rendered down over the fire. In many armies, meat was believed to carry the strength of the animal's spirit into the warrior. Among some, eating the heart or liver was a ritual reserved for champions. Today, the warrior simply takes his portion in silence, savoring the savory tang that cuts through the blandness of the bread. The drink of resolve, a jug, is passed around. It might hold watered wine in a Mediterranean camp, fermented barley beer in the northern lands, or bitter tea in the east. The warrior drinks sparingly, drunkenness before battle is folly. But the taste, sharp, slightly sweet, settles the knot in his stomach. Historical records often note that such drinks were not only for refreshment but also to ritually seal the warrior's shared fate. To drink from the same vessel was to declare unity, binding each man to the others. Whispers over the fire around him, conversation swells in hushed tones. One man murmurs about a dream he had, an eagle flying east, a good omen. Another swears he saw a raven circling over the enemy camp, a sign of their doom. Someone jokes about the bread being so hard it could be used as a shield. The laughter is brief but real, a fragile defense against the knowledge that some voices will not be heard again by nightfall. The warrior listens but says little. His eyes drift to the horizon, where the mist still clings to the fields. Soon, that mist will mingle with dust, then smoke, then the haze of war. He takes another bite. The psychological ritual for outsiders, this might seem like nothing, a plain meal eaten in the cold. But for these men, it is the final act of normalcy before stepping into chaos. Anthropologists and historians alike have noted the psychological role of this ritual, to create a bridge between the safety of the camp and the terror of the battlefield. By eating together, they anchor themselves in the present, reinforcing the belief that they face the coming danger as one. Foreshadowing the cost as the pots empty and the bread baskets lighten, there's an unspoken shift in the air. Men stand, adjust armor straps, test the weight of weapons. The warrior licks the last crumb from his fingers, the taste already fading. In hours, He will either remember this as the meal that carried him into victory, or he will remember nothing at all. The cook begins to douse the fire. Smoke rises in a final thick plume, curling like a ghost into the brightening sky. The warrior turns toward the line where the camp ends and the battlefield begins. His belly is full, but his heart feels heavier than the shield on his arm. The feast is over. The reckoning begins. The fire is out. The smell of smoke lingers only faintly in the air, clinging to wool cloaks and leather straps. The camp has changed. Where there was once the loose hum of conversation, there is now the sound of deliberate movement. Every man has a task, and every task is done with the silent knowledge that time is running out. The warrior brushes crumbs from his hands and begins the sequence that has been drilled into him since his first campaign. He kneels beside his gear. The shield comes first, inspected for cracks in the wood or loosened rivets in the bronze rim. The sword follows, its edge honed to a sharpness he can feel even without touching. He draws the blade halfway from its scabbard and catches a glint of pale dawn light along its length before sliding it home. The sound of readiness across the camp, there's a chorus of noises that repeat across centuries of warfare, the scrape of whetstones on iron, the rhythmic clatter of spear shafts being checked for balance, the muted thunk of arrows being packed tightly into quivers. Somewhere, an officer walks the lines, his boots crunching in the frost-hardened dirt. His voice is low but firm, calling out unit numbers, confirming positions. Each reply comes short and clipped, a soldier's voice in the moments before battle loses the casual tone it might have had the night before. The strategic frame from a rise near the camp, the warrior can see the lay of the land. The field stretches out in a wide, open plain with a gentle slope down toward the enemy's position. Historians would later write about this battle in terms of terrain advantage, supply lines, and weather conditions. But for the men here now, the view is simpler, there they are, and here we are. Yet even in its simplicity, the situation holds weight. The enemy has more cavalry. The wind is shifting westward, carrying dust toward their lines, but also sound. Drums in the distance thud slowly, each beat an announcement that the storm is drawing nearer. The private moments despite the growing clamor, some soldiers slip away for private rituals. One kneels to kiss the ground. Another ties a strip of cloth around his arm, a token from home. A few exchange brief, wordless embraces. The warrior fingers a small charm hanging from his neck, a simple piece of carved bone, and tucks it back under his tunic. The command to assemble a horn sounds, low and steady, rolling across the camp like the first deep rumble of thunder. Units begin to form ranks. The casual sprawl of camp life collapses into tight formation. The warrior takes his place among his comrades, the shield wall forming to his left and right. The officers pace before them, eyes scanning faces. They know fear is here, only fools would deny it, but fear must be tempered into focus. A short speech is given, not for poetry but for clarity, the signal, the plan, the rally points. There is no talk of retreat. The moment before the march silence falls again, but this time it is a heavy silence, thick with intent. The warrior breathes in deeply, tasting the last trace of wood smoke in the air. His fingers tighten around the grip of his weapon. Ahead lies the plain. Beyond that, the enemy. And above it all, the pale light of morning, too cold and too clean for the carnage it will soon reveal. The storm is about to break. The first horn blast is long and low, a sound that doesn't just travel through the air but sinks into the bones. The ranks shift forward, boots grinding into the frost-stiff earth. Ahead, the mist is thinning, revealing dark shapes moving against the horizon. The enemy has risen. They too are forming their lines. The warrior's breath is steady but deliberate now. He moves in step with the man to his right, the edge of their shields brushing in unison. To an outsider, the formation might look rigid, mechanical. But inside the line, each man feels the pulse of the others, the shared heartbeat of an army. The first advance, a second horn splits the air. The formation surges forward, a disciplined wall of wood, bronze, and flesh. The earth beneath their feet changes with every step, hard dirt giving way to softer ground, stones threatening to twist an ankle, the slope pulling them faster toward the enemy. The enemy's standard rises high, catching the new sunlight. They are closer now. The warrior can see faces, not yet in detail, but enough to read intent. Drums pound faster. Arrows hiss overhead. The first flight falls short, thudding into the soil like a warning. The commander shouts. Shields tilt upward. The next volley strikes with a clatter, thunk, arrows splintering against the layered defense. Somewhere to the left, a man cries out, not a death scream, but the sharp sound of pain. The line holds. The first collision, then comes the impact. The enemy charges the last few steps, and the two walls of men meet with a sound like a thunderclap. Spears thrust forward, shields slam, and the air is filled with the deep, guttural roar of men exerting every ounce of their strength. The warrior drives his shield into the man in front of him, feeling the shock up his arm. His sword flashes from its scabbard, cutting low toward an exposed leg. The enemy stumbles but doesn't fall. Around him, the line heaves back and forth, the human tide pushing for inches of ground. Moments of chaos. The battle is not a single uniform motion. It breaks into fragments, sudden duels erupting and ending within seconds. To his left, a comrade's spear shatters, forcing him to draw a dagger and fight at arm's length. To his right, another soldier falls, his shield slipping away, leaving a gap the enemy lunges to exploit. The warrior steps into the space without thinking, closing the line. Somewhere behind, the cavalry is moving. He hears the thunder of hooves and the crash as they strike the enemy's flank. A surge of hope ripples through the formation. The enemy staggers but does not break. The reversal then, without warning, the ground shifts, not literally, but in momentum. The enemy's second line surges forward, fresher and louder, their war cries cutting through the din. The warrior's arm aches from holding the shield high. His breath is ragged, his throat dry despite the cold. In that moment, he tastes it, not the bread, not the meat, but the faint tang of the watered wine from the morning. The last meal flashes in his mind for just an instant, and with it the thought, I cannot die here. Not yet. The push for survival. The line rallies. The commander's voice cuts through the chaos, ordering a shift in formation. Shields overlap tighter. Spears angle forward. The warrior lunges, his blade finding the gap beneath an opponent's arm. The man falls. The press of bodies begins to ease, just slightly. The enemy is giving ground. A third horn sounds. This is the call, not for retreat but for the final drive. The warrior roars with the others, the sound tearing from his throat until his chest aches. They push forward step by step, turning the slow give into a full withdrawal. The mist that once cloaked the field is gone now. The horizon is clear, and so is the truth. The enemy is breaking. Some run. Some drop weapons and fall to their knees. The warrior stumbles forward with the momentum, his legs trembling from exhaustion. It is not yet over, pockets of resistance remain, and the killing must be done quickly before the enemy can regroup. But for the first time since dawn, the warrior allows the smallest thought to cross his mind, we might survive this day. The battlefield is quiet now, not in peace, but in the way a room falls silent after the door slams. The air still smells of iron and smoke. Somewhere, a single groan rises from the ground, then fades into nothing. The drums are gone. The horns are gone. Only the wind remains, brushing over the plain as though trying to erase what just happened. The warrior stands among the living, though he feels more ghost than man. His shield arm hangs heavy at his side, the wood splintered, the bronze rim dented. His sword, streaked with dried and fresh blood, drags low, too heavy to lift without purpose. Around him, men move in slow, deliberate steps, not the urgency of battle, but the exhausted shuffle of bodies that have given everything. The field of the fallen, the ground is littered with shapes that were men hours ago. Some lie in unnatural angles, armor cracked open like broken shells. Others are still breathing, but shallowly, clutching at wounds too deep to heal here. Flies are already gathering, drawn to the metallic scent in the air. The warrior steps carefully between them, his eyes unfocused. He sees faces he knows and others he doesn't. Friends. Enemies. It is difficult to tell the difference now. Everyone wears the same expression, the still mask of death. The search he scans the field for familiar figures. There's a knot in his chest as he spots a comrade's shield lying in the dirt, the crest chipped away. He walks toward it, bracing for what he might find. When he sees the man's face, it is pale but breathing. Relief floods him, though it is tempered by the knowledge that others were not as fortunate. Nearby, a priest or healer moves from body to body, murmuring prayers or giving water. The warrior watches but does not approach. He knows his presence cannot change their fate. The strategic consequences farther off, officers gather around the commander. They speak in sharp, low tones, gesturing toward the horizon where the enemy's survivors have fled. Scouts are already dispatched to pursue or observe. This was not just a victory of bodies, but of territory and morale. Yet victories in history books do not mention the limp of a man whose knee will never heal, or the hollow stare of one who has lost a brother. Those details vanish into footnotes. But for the warrior, they are the entire story. The last glimpse back as the sun tilts toward afternoon, the order comes to return to camp. The warrior obeys, but before leaving the field, he glances back one last time. The wind moves over the grass, bending it in waves. The same earth that fed their bread this morning now drinks their blood. He does not know if he will ever stand on this ground again. But he knows he will remember the faces, the sounds, and the quiet, especially the quiet. The meal from dawn feels like it happened in another lifetime. By nightfall, the campfire glows again. The air is quieter than it was that morning, not because fear is gone, but because exhaustion has taken its place. The surviving warriors eat in smaller groups now, the gaps between them filled by absence. The bread tastes the same, the drink is the same, but it lands differently in the mouth. It is no longer the taste of preparation, it is the taste of survival. The warrior sits with what remains of his unit. The faces are familiar, but the expressions have changed. They have shared something that no one outside this circle will truly understand. The memory of the last meal now feels like a photograph burned into the mind, warm bread, smoke in the air, the low murmur of voices, a fragile calm before the earth shifted under their feet. Across cultures, across time, history is full of warriors who knew this same ritual. The Norsemen feasted on roasted meats and mead, believing they might dine in Valhalla by day's end. The Spartans sipped their black broth, grim and purposeful, knowing it might be their last. The samurai performed the tea ceremony, finding stillness before the chaos. Even in modern armies, the last meal persists, not always formal, but a shared moment before the march. Across centuries, across continents, the act is the same, to fill the body, to steady the mind, and to bind the group together before they face the unthinkable. More than food, a last meal before battle is never just about hunger. It is an act of defiance against the uncertainty of the hours ahead. It is a way of claiming one final moment of control in a day where control will be shattered again and again. It is the human declaration, we are still alive now. For historians, these moments are often footnotes. But for the men and women who lived them, they were a ritual as important as sharpening the blade or tying the armor straps. The echo that remains, the warrior will remember the taste of that bread and the weight of that silence for as long as he lives. And in this way, the meal, simple, unremarkable, quickly consumed, becomes immortal. Because the story of the last meal is the story of war itself, the collision of life's simplest needs with its most violent moments.